Mira Karunanidhi, Nora Quigley, and also Ariki Te Puni. And as you come to the stage, I'll say a little bit about each of you. Mira has just completed her conjoint Bachelor of Law and Commerce degree and is a graduate at PwC Legal in Auckland and was a national finalist in 2016. She has maintained a connection with the Race Unity Speech Awards over the years, including undertaking the role of Chief Judge of the Race Unity Speech Awards Lower North Island Heats last year. Where are you? Feel free, I'll be here. Nora is currently doing a Bachelor of Global Studies with a minor in Human Rights and a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy and Politics. Ariki is extremely passionate about creating genuinely equitable access to really impressive young people. I'm going to join you there now.
Other young people is really what motivated you to commit to furthering racial equity and to work towards unity as well. So can I ask you what role you see young people playing in establishing race unity? A little bit better at correcting people nowadays. It's just the division that's I think I definitely have got a lot better at correcting people, and I think to anyone in the group who may get their name incorrectly pronounced, definitely stand up and correct people, because there is so much honor in your name, and it carries not only your family but your whole culture and tradition as well. So just wanted to preface by saying that. Secondly, to answer your question, I think young people play such a crucial role in establishing race unity. However, I think the furthering of race unity is an intergenerational issue, and not necessarily something that our youth should carry the burden of. But in saying that, I don't think there can be true, meaningful social change without the participation and drive of our youth. Our rangatahi have the power and potential to create meaningful social change, to dismantle the systems of oppression that continue to disproportionately affect our minority communities even today. If you look at the youth around you, I see a lot of youth in the room, we're fearless, we're impatient, we have a willingness to challenge the status quo, and I think ultimately, as we've seen in the Race Unity Speech Awards, we have the creativity needed to reimagine what we want Aotearoa to look like, and that's really important. And we may be the future of our country, but we're not just future leaders. Don't wait for permission. Engage, educate, advocate, and empower the people around you, so together, all of us can create a better Aotearoa. Very good, and thank you for correcting me. Someone who's first at your passion in terms of creating equitable access to opportunities. And I'm just keen to hear a little bit from you about what you see in the future, or what you hope the future to be. So if we were to look towards 2040 and race relations then, we would then also be marking 200 years since the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. What are you hoping to see in the year 2040?
Kia ora. That's a good question. In terms of, I guess, firstly, from a tangata whiu perspective, what we're trying to achieve is the bicultural structure systems and our governance systems in Aotearoa. And I think on the back end of that, we have been able to foster multiculturalism. I think, from my perspective, the goal is bicultural systems within our governance, within private sector as well. And from that, we allow diversity to really thrive within our community. Sorry, it's throwing me off a little bit. But on what Mara was saying, I think this generation in particular, when you think about social change that happens, I like to think of it as momentum shifts. I know the rugby player, right? And typically when you see these momentum shifts in social change that happens generationally, for instance, this has been going for 21 years. People of that generation started the conversations. They started the whispers in the back of the room. The next generation on from that, we get rooms full like this. And it is not necessarily
one who was part of those sessions made the point that Titiriti or Waitani actually shows us the way. It is the blueprint for how we treat each other and treat others who come to Aotearoa as well. Nora, you are one of our speakers here today. I believe you are the most recent, or you've spoken most recently in the awards. Can you tell us a little bit about the impact that being part of the Race Unity Awards program has had on your life?
Yeah, I think, not to be cliche, but Race Unity Aotearoa and everything that they continue to stand for had made a transformational difference in my life. So coming into this space, I was always aware of people mocking me or making fun of something that's really close to my heart. And I think what I found was not only youth voice being finally recognised, but celebrated and acknowledged in a way that I hadn't seen before. I stepped foot into marae. It also allowed my mum to open up about the troubles for the first time and kind of gave her the strength and courage to talk about that. And so it changed the conversations around my dinner table, and through equipping me to hold others accountable, change my friends' perspectives as well. And so, yeah, definitely coming away from the speech awards, I still have a fear of public speaking, but it's something I enjoy a little bit more. And so, yeah, I think while my intentions might have been somewhat questionable at the time, it was definitely one of the best decisions I could have made.
Sporadic recklessness, love it. Also, as the former Minister for Youth, I'm really pleased that you mentioned the youth voice, and I think that's actually been a bit of a theme of what all three of you have talked about today, the importance of that. Of course, it doesn't fall solely to young people, but I think we have seen the youth voice loud and clear in a few different, or many different arenas, so absolutely take your point on that. Just sticking with you, Nora, you are studying human rights, I understand. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Ariki. What do you envision for the year, I'm just picking the year 2040 because it does mark 200 years since the signing of Titiriti, and it's, fair in the future. So what do you hope for us to have achieved by then?
Ideally we would have achieved social cohesion, but I don't think that social cohesion is something that we've reached through a series of processes or implementation of systems. Rather, it's a social shift and a cultural shift and narrative change that is everyone's responsibility to cultivate as individuals through taking accountability for our own bias and subconscious the kind of microaggressions that we hold towards certain groups of people. From a Pākehā perspective, I think it's recognising that Titiriti isn't just a historical document, that it's a living, breathing thing, that it's the relationship and the bicultural relationship between not only Pākehā and tangata whenua, but tangata whenua and anyone that comes to Aotearoa, and recognising that within that everyone has a role to play. I think it looks like the reform of education systems and recognising what that looks like to have culturally competent based education systems that just look at how do we best support all of rangatahi and all of tamariki, not those that were historically built, I suppose. I think it looks like make it 16, it looks like having the voting age lowered, it looks like climate action now, and I think it just looks like my ideal socially cohesive Aotearoa for all looks like it's equitable, it's sustainable, and it's kind to everyone all the time and everywhere.
That's an awesome vision. A little bit of a plug here since we've got a hall full of people who are a captive audience. Anyone who is interested in looking a little bit further into social cohesion and what different sectors could do, actions or steps that different sectors, different groups can take, there is all that material from the Social Cohesion Work Programme that you find on the MSD website. So it absolutely is a collective responsibility. And there are steps that all of us can take, whether it's individuals or parts of different groups and sectors. But the thing is, all of that work, the people who input into it, it's all just going to stay on the website if we don't use it as well. Hence the plug over. Mira, I understand that you've been involved quite a bit in both the not-for-profit sector and particularly in the social justice space. And I was really interested in that because largely that's where I come from as well, prior to entering Parliament. I was just wondering, based on your experience in those sectors, if you had to identify a couple of tangible steps that we can take that would take us as a society further towards dismantling racial prejudice and injustice, what would they be?
Dismantle racial prejudice ultimately. I guess firstly at a more individual level, don't underestimate the importance, as Nora said, of challenging and examining your own internalized and interpersonal biases. Our voices might be loud, but our silence will be even louder if we don't stand up to discriminatory behaviour or racism when we see it happening. And I think that involves a certain level of challenging our own biases and also obviously the courage needed to stand up to it when you see it happening. On a more practical level, I think we can contribute to the National Action Plan Against Racism that our government is committed to developing. It is election year as well, so I would hope and expect the future government would also be committed to developing too. And yeah, so that's, I think, there are stages of public consultation and public engagement. So if that's not on your radar already, that's, I think, a tangible contribution you can make to furthering racial unity in Aotearoa. Secondly, I think at a more societal level, I don't think it's something I can talk about in the space of a very short amount of time, but something I think is important is acknowledging the systemic racism that is embedded into our institutions, laws, policies, and practices. And something that I think is important is decolonising a lot of our systems. If you want to chat to me about specific examples of what I think we can do, have a chat to me after. In a short amount of time, I think there are inequities in things like healthcare, education, disproportionate representation of our taonga whenua and our criminal justice system, which need to be tackled. And we need to acknowledge those systemic inequities. And I think the fact of the matter is we are living in a colonial system created by and for Pākehā. And what this ultimately means is that our minority communities are not well served by the system that we're currently living in. And we're making great steps towards that, but there's a lot to be done still. And I think, first and foremost, sitting in the heart of government, I think this is quite fitting, but keep our institutions accountable for any inactions or actions that may perpetrate racism or discriminatory behaviour. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. You ultimately hit the nail on the head when you said that our system is not set up for us. That is so true. That was in fact the reflection of one member of the social cohesion, one in the group, who basically said this. I'm actually going to throw it to you guys. So if you had one last burning thing that you felt you wanted to say in your contributions that you didn't, now is your chance, and we're going to start with you, Te Ariki.
I think don't put too much pressure on yourself to change the world. By being in this room, by being in the position you're here, you've gone a long way in furthering our rules. It's that idea of mosquitoes are more dangerous than elephants. If you create a space where social change can fester, then you're doing a huge thing for our people. So.
This is probably just a reflection as to what I probably experienced tomorrow morning, and it's a lot of the time I come into these spaces where I'm so compelled by the hope and the strength that is shown among so many individuals and the group as a whole, and then I'll go back into the spaces of the institutions with the communities where it doesn't feel as hopeful. And I think it's just about recognising that a lot of the time when you're having conversations that feel slightly marginal, that they feel as though the person isn't responding or that they're not going to change their ideology, it's always important to recognise that there's going to be, it's that wall of ignorance, and a lot of the time it's the fear that they have of creating change, the fear that they have of being misunderstood. misunderstood or ostracized. And so what I've tried to do intentionally over the past few years, but specifically since I was a part of the speech awards, was to invite people out for coffee if I feel as though they have microaggressions or bias that just aren't okay. Don't try and be, well, obviously there's a level of anger that we need to have, but in terms of accountability, it's more so about creating meaningful transformational relationships. Not trying to be just transactional about getting them from A to B, but rather about allowing them to transform their own bias in the process.
I think you both summed it up really well. Just to conclude, I just want to say a big mahi to everyone in this room, all the young people, and everyone who's doing, great things in the community. Just by being here in this room today, in the heart of Parliament, in the heart of change, social change, I think we're all one step closer to achieving racial unity. So a big mahi to everyone.
Can I just thank the three of you for being part of this panel? I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm sure the audience has enjoyed hearing from you as well. And thank you for the work that you're all doing as well. I thought I'd just end with this whakatauki. Mamua ka kite amuri, mamuri ka ora amua. Those who lead give sight to those who follow. Those who follow give life to those who lead. Thank you all so much.